happy that you're joining us today. And the agenda is, as you may have seen in the invite, is something about new licensing, and then kind of quick overview of our news and updates for 2025, and also an outlook for what's next in 2025. So we're starting out with cloud licensing. What and why? So, as you may already seen from our app homepages, in the What's New section, there is a mentioning of this, and we have chosen to migrate to a new cloud licensing server. And this means that we are activating the apps using a license key directly within Mechanical. And why is this, you might ask? So, for starters, one reason is that Ansys has started to provide web-based or cloud-based licensing. And also some customer has started to specifically ask for, is the apps going to have a cloud-based solution for licensing? So that's one of the reasons, and also that many softwares and products are using this kind of technology. So next reason also follows with the history of our apps using the Flexera license server, is that we will eliminate license server installation, firewall settings, network issues, working on VPN, working not on VPN, remote, local, and every of that is then removed. Another reason is that this will help us speed up onboarding of new customers, so we can provide evaluation keys as well as when we come to regarding trainings. And we can also directly update, if needed, the number of tasks. So if you have one license and need one more, we can instantly process and do that. As well as we would then have full control of all our customers and their subscriptions, and our admin team and our support team instantly have access to this data, and that was an issue kind of before. So that's of a number of reasons why we are doing this change. The next question, how? So we have started using a commercial cloud license provider. So this is connecting over standard HTTPS protocol to connect and check in out the license. And this is, of course, common in every PC that you have access to this. And this means also that any Windows PC, that has always been the case with the apps, that you need a Windows PC to be able to run the licensing client and running Workbench. But any Windows PC, both physical or virtual in a remote desktop, can connect as long as you have an internet connection. The next up is that in the app we have something called the customer ID and license key credentials. So this is something that we then create when purchasing or renewing in an app, and is then used to activate the app. So each app has then, of course, a unique license key for each customer, and this key is persistent. So that's another nice feature, that after getting this initial license key, it doesn't need to be replaced or updated when renewing. But as said, if you renew a license, we just change the expiration date and this key continues to be valid. Or in the case that adding more tasks if needed. And as mentioned, these are credentials that should be kept safe and are treated like passwords. So they only work when you have both of them correctly. And finally, with this new implementation, you can directly also check your expiration and available number of licenses directly inside Mechanical for each specific app. So a number of making this more easy for the user. So as it would look when you in the apps are looking at the settings, you will find the license settings at the bottom where you copy paste these credentials, or you can also right click and say install license file, and also the check license status, where it in clear printout will tell you if the license is valid or not. You will see the remaining activations and the usernames of all active users. One other point here to mention when we now have introduced this about privacy. So just as we store your information in our CRM system regarding your customer and users, the thing we save in this new cloud license server is minimal. So we keep basically a company name to identify the license keys for each company, and a corresponding customer ID. So the customer ID is this scrambled key. Then of course we have a license name to identify the license key and the related active users dash machines. Each machine is identified by a fingerprint, so that's again an encrypted string used to just make sure that what machine is accessing what license feature. And finally, to give you the active user list, we take the username when you check out the machine. So each active user is identified by your Windows login username. And finally, one addition is that we will then log the data. So each check-in, check-out is logged via a timestamp, the IP address, and the fingerprint of the machine accessing a license. So with this information, we can both monitor and help you to validate how much usage you have. And to be clear here, that any personal information such as email, phone number, address, or IT-related information of domain name, computer name is never saved on this server. So there is no user database whatsoever. And also a statement from our cloud license provider that they comply with GDPR, whether you're inside or outside of European Union. So a few notes here about this licensing solution. Next up, when doing this migration, we have, of course, new versions for 2025 R1. But also, since we have a large customer base with existing licenses, we have also created new versions for 2024 and 2023. And they are then available on the download page of the app. And the good news here for any existing users who are not up to date with latest Ansys version is that any of the new features presented today is available in these releases as well. So if you're still on 2023 or 2024, you will automatically get all new features. And also note then, if you are working with even older Ansys version, so 3 years old as of today, the 2022, those versions will continue to work if you have a valid CAD/FEM license installation, so a paid up license on the CAD/FEM license server will continue to work for those legacy app versions. So we're not removing that support. So just as before, on the download page, you will now find the corresponding installation files, and you will also notice that the naming is slightly modified. So these new versions are named with a full year, so 2025 R1.0. So this is the first release of 2025. And we also see the same for the previous Ansys versions. So that's one way to distinguish. So you can have actually the old version installed, but if you migrate into the new version in a project, then of course you need to continue to use the new version. What we also inform here is this migration that we have been starting sending out these new license files to all our customers. And we're doing this in a kind of controlled fashion, but we hope to finalize that during the following week. And some have already reached out to our support team about the license files, and we of course try to process this as soon as possible. And finally, in the documentation pages for each app, you find the licensing page, and here you also can read about these information and the steps here to activate an app, or if you are in a multi-user environment that you have, how you can then share these credentials, and same as before, use a shared drive for the apps to provide to all users within the organization. And also something about our licensing policy and use. So all existing contracts, whether it's a paid up or a lease contract, are migrated to this new licensing. So we're not enforcing any changes whatsoever. So we have, as mentioned, started sending these out. And all existing contracts can be renewed. But the new thing going forward is that in the past we have requested the license form, meaning that you should sign on what site to use the license, and we decided to simply remove this license form request. And that means that we, within the license, now automatically include global WAN. So whether you work at the on-site in the office, or if you work remotely, or if you travel to different office at a different site, you're always now allowed to use the apps using your license credentials. So when purchasing or renewing an annual lease license, this is now the standard. And that also brings us basically simplifying our app offering going forward. So two main choices: that you can either have a single task, so one user floating license, and you can have basically 1 to 5 of these. But if you are a bigger organization, we have continue to have the bundle of 25 tasks, which is then a kind of flat rate, because the pricing there is not 25 times the single task. So in that sense, very easy to decide regarding the licensing. So that's about licensing. So quite much news, and hopefully this will make the life easier for both of us. Moving on then to report generator and a quick update on what's new here. So this is the short list here of the new things. So there are a couple of bug fixes dealing with the report settings, and also a couple of new features here regarding the template, and how to also customize the outline levels. So starting with some words here around the Word template is that the app uses the document properties to save information such as the author and the reviewer and so on. However, what we've done in this update now is also to define all these as custom document properties. So as we see here, this is the cutout from the macro inside the template. So all the metadata from the project, such as the document ID, revision, item number, Ansys product version, is saved as a corresponding custom document property. So this makes it more consistent and to create a good Word template. So that requires, if you're already having your company template, that you can make these changes to get the best functionality. The other changes is around the settings on how to control what sections to include in the report. So for instance, there is the standard sections like introduction, conclusions, and reference. And there was a feature that you could have an introduction HTML file, and this is now one of the bug fixes. So you can have a predefined HTML file for each of these sections, meaning that you can then prepare your report and have text tables that is imported automatically when setting up the report. And the other nice thing here is that you can now in better control not just automate and rename things. So in this case here, renaming the analysis to loads and boundary conditions, or renaming solution to results, but also then specifying the specific outline level, the hierarchy in the report. So for instance, should solution be on the same heading level as analysis, or should solution be on level 2? Or you can even then push it down to level 3 if you want. So to modify compared to the hierarchy that we have in the model tree. One other little tweak here is that in the report generator, there is 2 features specifically to use with the Bolt and Weld Toolkit, and that is the worksheet preview and Bolt and Weld report. And the little issue is that if you don't have a dedicated report generator license, you would have this invalid property here saying that you don't have a license key. However, the solution is just to suppress the report settings, then you don't get a question mark and don't get any issues when working with this. Next up is the app with the most updates over the last year. So in the autumn Coffee with an Expert, there was a lot of news regarding the workflows, and this has now continued. So again, here we have a longer list, and I will talk about it and also do some quick demonstrations here. So in short, these updates are much around the workflow and the ability to work with model assembly and consistent and updating, refreshing your setup. There is also now new context actions, so beam connections can be created from rivets or simplified bolts. And also another nice new enhancement is the support for mechanical condensed part workflow, meaning that you can create super elements or condensed parts, import those, and use Bolt Toolkit to connect those parts to your other structures. And this is done. One thing is to allow nodal scoping, but also allowing existing remote points. So we'll show that in a second. And finally, there is another little tweak here that the bolt's pretension now has the option program controlled as default, meaning that it will select what type of pretension to use, just as the native bolt's pretension. So refresh bolt configuration, what is that? So already from the start, there has been, if I bring up my model, and I think I will pause my camera view. So we have here that you can save the bolt setup, meaning all the defined bolts and results. And this is now also done automatically when solving a model. These are saved. And one reason for this is if I showcase this project page here. So here I have a situation continuation from what I showed in the autumn, where I have three systems, the frame and the boxes, and these are linked together here to a model assembly system. So the nice thing here is that if you do bolt setup in one of these systems here, you can then easily read them in and also refresh if you do an update on this simulation here with its modal and also substructure generation part. The information can then be refreshed in the assembly. So if again point to this model here, if I pick an analysis and say refresh bolt configuration, it will re-import those configurations. And the nice trick here is that when creating this assembly model, you can import a configuration. So here is the rivets from the frame, and it also now has this property displaying that this is coming from this file located in the user files folder. And you can also right click and say update group from source. That means that if there are updates to the rivets or bolts in this group, if you have added, for instance, one more rivets group or bolts group, those will be updated, as well as any properties that are updated. So it's just like right clicking and say update geometry from source, for instance. One other of the nice features here is the promote to beam connections. So in this work on improving the workflow, allowing model assembly, we also now have the possibility to simply right click and say promote to beam connection. So that allows you to set up a model or automatically create these connections. But if you for some reason want to create a native model, meaning that it can then create the corresponding remote points for each of these bolt objects. And also under connections, we find that it can create the corresponding beam connections. So in this case, it's now have reverted this to suppress these features, as we see. And also this is kind of showcasing why Bolt Toolkit is so efficient, because instead of having to manage hundreds and hundreds of individual remote points or beam connections, everything of this is managed from a single object where these all these features are defined. So here we have the 42 of these, and in total we have 102 in this group. So anyhow, the ability to create remote points also then serves the purpose for the next part here around condensed part workflow. So as highlighted here in this project page, I have a part that I both run a model analysis and also added the substructure generation. So a condensed part, CPA, can then, and here I also actually have a little For some reason in mechanical there is a graphic glitch, so I have a question mark here. But as it turns out, I can just toggle the geometry display or whatever, show ID number to get that question mark away. So coming back here, the condensed part workflow allow you to, as here, imported condensed part. This has then a number of interface nodes, and they have coming from this model where they were created using the Bolt Toolkit. And what I've done here is to create a nodal component of these interface nodes. So coming forward in this model, model here, I have my other parts which might have their connections. And finally, I have what I call the model assembly group here. And this is now my connection, connecting the nodes from the super element with the scoping of these bodies. So the post-processing of this looks, you only see the results on your physical parts, because imported condensed parts is not supported as of yet in Ansys Mechanical. There is actually another way also to mention here around this workflow, that you can insert condensed geometry and do what's called a top-down condensed part. And that means that you then are able to see the results from that condensed part in the analysis and post-process all the rivets and bolts, etc. So if, just to highlight this, in the documentation, there is a section around this. So it's located under the rivets group, because, yeah, somewhere to put it. It describes briefly how this top-down workflow or the bottom-up workflow. And what I was showcasing here was the bottom-up workflow, where I have created a substructure generation and imported. So there is something around these steps and how you would use this feature. Another little change in the Bolt Toolkit is, so we have the bolt pretension type, whether it's, as we can also just point here. So in all the bolts group, when we have pretension, you can now select program controlled, which is the new default, or manually say, I want to use the pretension element called Prets 179 or joint MPC 184. So the naming here relates to the mechanical pretension feature. And the idea is, of course, if you set up your analysis with large deflection, it will automatically use the joint. And if it's joint large deflection off, it will use the pretension. But you can also overrule and manually specify either of these. So it's available in both the simplified, in the advanced bolts, and the bolts pretension feature. And finally, one other nice enhancement is that you now can select beam behavior for rivets and simplified bolts. And previously there was an option called custom. And the reason here is that if you're dealing with models where you have imported temperatures, so again in this example model here, I have a thermal analysis, added some thermal conditions, and have imported temperatures. So when looking here on our behavior, it says beam. And this will then create, as we see in this result plot here, beam elements connecting to the nodes within the bolt head or bolt thread. So this will not then make your model over-constrained, too rigid or deformable, but instead allow you to have no issues with over-constraints or that you don't get convergence. So that's about beam behavior, and also, as we saw in the results, you can then visualize connections more clear. Right, and then moving on to Weld Toolkit. So very much of what I just said regarding Bolt Toolkit is now the same here regarding this refreshed Weld configuration, the Weld configuration source and update group from source, and also the group features to show geometry, show coordinate system. The other new features I will also quickly go over is around post-processing weld strength, that we have a number of new options here. So again, refresh weld configuration. If defining welds in your model, they are automatically saved when you solve the model, and you can then import in a model assembly. And again, you can then refresh these. So again, on the weld group, you would then see the configurations. So why this is again meaningful is a couple of reasons. So again, this very old demo model that showcases 3 types of welds. So to start with, we have a shared topology of these solids. It could also be a shell model with shared topology. We have one part which is a physical fillet weld, and finally we have a gap where we are using the add weld. So using the add weld, which creates physical weld elements, then using the new features virtual weld that was introduced in 2024 R2. These are placeholders, so to say. So I have the scoping, I get the visual representation, I specify what type it is, what size it is. So here I say that this is a manual select no weld, and the other one here, I'm saying that is a manual select weld part, meaning there is a physical weld part, and this informs the app on how to extract the forces from the weld. And after setting this up, we have a clear picture of the welds in the model, and you can of course have different types. So we have a set of butt welds. And for post-processing purposes, this is now nice. So you can, with the click of a button here, just add weld strength, and it creates then the strength result for each object in the weld. And you can of course redo that to create several groups of post-processing, different time steps, and so forth. And you get them nicely grouped. And finally, you can also use the group weld strength to, in one result, display results for each of these objects. Sorry, wrong model. Just as in Bolt Toolkit now, on the group level, we also here can control to toggle the visibility of the weld geometry. So if we have a weld result, now it's just plotting the result outline, but we can, if I toggle here, show geometry on result, also visualize the weld on the result. And finally, you can also toggle here the ID number, and if you want to see the coordinate system as well for the weld. So easily to target. And in the past you used tags for doing these. Right. Then kind of the last thing to talk about regarding weld. So one of also the big updates last year was around the result locations. So in the R2 release, we got the option to select whether we're post-processing at the throat section, at the leg 0, so at the reference phase, or at the leg 1, meaning at the target phase. And we also got the option to select the average value, the root value, or the phase 2 value. So what I'm kind of showing with this picture here is now that we have the ability to select whether we're looking for the value specifically at the phase, at the toe, at the root, or if we want to get the value at the mid. And as shown here, that the shear force and normal stress varies across the section. And by having these new options, we can now select whether we want to have the absolute max of the values, or if we want the average from the section. So the shear average, normal stress average, or specifically at the root or toe. For instance, if doing structural stress fatigue, we can then select, I want to use the root stress for my fatigue assessment. And this also then is updated in the graphics how these options look. So by default, throat average is always the default value, which is a very good choice to start with. Another little update before we round off is around the floating segment average when post-processing weld strength. And there was an issue, as highlighted in this picture, that if your mesh sizing was either very much larger than the mesh size of the weld, or actually smaller, that the floating average could give gaps in the plots or giving wrong values, and it failed to correctly calculate the average length of each node. So this has been addressed in this new update. So as a comparison here, the same weld evaluated as a constant value. So there is a small variation in the forces for this section with thin mesh and the other longer section. Post-processing it as a linear average with the segment average with a 10 millimeter segment, and finally the floating average with a 10 factor for the floating average. And as we see here in the ranges, that the values are now extremely close and no strange offset or changes in values. So to round this off, the outlook for 2025 is, of course, that check in the what's new section for the apps, as new features and bug fixes might be posted at any time. To look out for in the plan for Bolt Toolkit is, for instance, advanced bolt editor, meaning that you can then more easily control and define new bolts. There's also hopefully a new feature to add quad layer, so take advantage of the meshing feature in Mechanical to improve meshing around holes. On report generator, we hope to have also the ability to have multiple profiles, so you can have different report templates for different purposes and different settings for that. And also for weld strength, to improve further on evaluation speed with a new calculate time history feature. So this is already in the Bolt Toolkit. And also request on weld fatigue for a hotspot strain range feature. As of today, that's always stress range.